23. I'd like to call this meeting of the Beach Stewardship Committee into order. And if you would please join me now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you. And can we have a roll call now, please?
Member Welch?
Welch, did I hear? Yes.
Member Rosnicki?
Here.
Member Marriott?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kurzman?
Yes.
Chair Rothenberger?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We have several presentations before we actually start our meeting. And before we do that, we want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Last September, St. Pete Beach was recognized as 4th in the country for marine species. And Teresa Arnholz was here for the sea turtle trackers, but Holly Short could not be here for the Audubon Society, and she is here today. And Holly, I'd like to give you this certificate, and thank you. Holly, thank you so much for your hard work. I've seen it firsthand.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate working so much.
Okay, and our first presentation, I believe, is going to be, from Matthew? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Matthew McConnell, Assistant City Attorney. Good to see you all. Good morning. So I was asked to give an update on the beach ordinance. Where we left off was we had a few joint workshops, as you all know, you were party to that. And then we left off with updating it. Now, the interesting wrinkle here is there was a few Senate bills that came out, one of them being Senate Bill 170. And what that bill requires is anytime a local government is changing an ordinance, if you don't meet certain exemptions, then you have to do what's called a business impact statement. So that is going to be a tall task for the city. These are things that we've been kind of slowly doing for the ordinances that we've been preparing for the City Commission. But you can imagine that this ordinance that we're preparing, there will be a lot of businesses, quote unquote, impacted by it. And what Jennifer's been doing as well is she's actually, because where we left off was, I would say we were probably 80% in agreement with most of the changes. There were maybe some stylistic things or some definitions that needed to be updated. But it was really the amount of chairs, right? That was really kind of the cabanas and the amount of chairs. So what we've been doing, because the commission wanted us to do, from what I understood, some kind of percentage, right? Maybe 60%, 50%. That is what we are currently determining. Jennifer has had site visits with some of the resorts, not all of them yet, to try to work with them and determine what is the right percentage across the board, so that maybe we're saying, okay, every night you have to bring in 30% of your chairs or 40% of your chairs based on surface area on the beach. So I've made most of the updates on the ordinance. Obviously there's a lot going on in the city currently. So my plan is, once we get through the holidays, I don't know if the business impact statement will be prepared yet, but I will mention it in an attorney report to the commission and kind of give them an update and say, okay, we're about there. How would you want to do this? Should we schedule a joint workshop again with the beach stewardship? Would you like me to go there first? Obviously, I get direction from them, and then we will proceed accordingly. Okay. So that's really the update. I wish I had a document in front of you, but the reality is this language about the percentage is something that we really have to be very meticulous about, and it's going to take some time to craft. And we're still meeting with some of the resorts, because at the end of the day, there's no point of passing something that's going to get appealed for 2 years. I mean, we want to make sure that we're being good neighbors and we're working with the businesses here. The resorts being maybe the most impacted, maybe not, depending on what we discover.
Interesting.
We can ask questions, yes?
So, I mean, there were a lot of different parts of this ordinance, many of which still, I think, could be discussed, besides the chairs at night. But regarding the chairs at night, are we talking about, you referred to a percentage, like a percentage of their chairs. But that might motivate some of the hotels to bring out more chairs during the day, or you know, it may affect things. So, or is it a percentage of just the space? In other words, that, you know, you should never have more than X percent of the area behind your resort covered at night. Regardless of what you're doing during the day, maybe it makes more sense for it to be a percentage of just the area. You know, we need 90% open for the turtles at night. Because that's really what they don't care about how many you had during the day. They only
It's at night,
care about
right.
what you have at night, if that's the metric we're talking about for nighttime. But during the day, there's another set of metrics, which is the rest of the people who are traversing the beach. And there it's, you know, what percentage of the area is going to be covered by chairs just during the day, you know, within a formula of, how, you know, the spacing that we were talking about. But again, it would be not a percentage of like how many chairs they own, it would be a percentage, again, of just the area that they have in some way.
No, and that's a great question. So if you remember, there was language in there regarding buffers as well, right? So essentially, the best way that I can think about doing this is having resorts, once this ordinance gets passed, provide some form of site plan, right? Where maybe they delineate what chairs and the spacing requirements, and they create that buffer behind, you know, 75 feet from each side, maybe, I believe it's 50 feet from the water. And once you have that area on the site plan, there will be chairs delineated on the site plan, right? So maybe in this area you have 100 chairs, and at night you're required to bring in 30%. Now, whether it's the ones closest to the water or the ones closest landward, from what I hear from the resorts is everyone wants to sit closer to the water, right? That's what most people want to do. They want to go the first, second, and third rows. So maybe it's the 30% landward that's removed, but that's kind of big picture what we're thinking. It's going to be based on the site plan, the number of chairs delineated, and then the percentage may not work. I mean, that's what the commission wanted, but once we craft the language and they actually see some of these diagrams, and you all see some of these diagrams, you may say, hey, we got to craft this a little bit differently. This is confusing, this is going to be hard to enforce, but that's kind of where we left off on that specific issue.
Right, okay. Yeah, it's a lot of different.
Michael, did you have a question?
Yes, and a statement. I think John's idea is great. It should be not a percentage of the chairs, because if you take the 30% that are the easiest, it should be space so that turtles can get up to where they need to go and people can get through and not trip at night. So if we delineate an area rather than a percentage of chairs, or both, it would make much more sense to me.
Well, and when it comes to turtles, I think it's important to remember that those same regulations that are in place now about once there's a turtle nest, the spacing are still going to be in play.
Right.
Right. This is more of.
But this is to get them up to make the nest. They
Fair
can't
enough.
walk through the barrier of front row chairs if you're only removing back row chairs.
Understood.
See what I mean?
But yeah, turtles are main importance for us. I think most of the discussion, and you all were there and probably monitoring it, was, you know, they're leaving chairs on the beach 24/7 essentially. They're crowbarring them in, you know, they're never moving them. They're kind of structures at that point. So that's where this percentage potentially comes into play once we determine that.
I probably shouldn't say this, it's not a popular thing to say, but I still personally believe that the turtles, when they come up at night, if they see a chair, I'm told they don't just give up, they will leave and make a nest somewhere else. And so I personally feel like we're tricking the turtles to lay their eggs in the worst possible places. And it'd be better to leave the chairs out in the front row so they don't lay their eggs at the trade winds. They lay their eggs in, you know, some lot that sits empty most of the time. But that's just my, you know, unexperienced view. I mean, I know that they're scientists, but you know, they don't give up the first time they come somewhere. But the other thing is the type of chairs, because, you know, that should be a consideration, because there's lightweight chairs that then need collars that would have to stay in the sand, and that would be a tripping hazard, you know, that they get anchored to. Then there's heavy chairs, but then those are hard to move. So it's still making a very difficult situation for, I think, the resorts to figure out what they need to do when you start talking about dragging everything in and out all the time.
I understand
To be
that.
safe for the wind. And then the other thing is, I think we have to consider, there's two different kinds of hotels. I mean, it may not matter because of customary use, but some of the hotels have deeds where it just says they have a deed for the land. I was looking at Serrata, for instance. It just says, hey, you have the land, and it's pretty much from what I saw in their application, it was pretty much a solid deed. I've seen other hotels, and I won't name them, where it says there's an exclusion, where it says, Duke Energy has the right to have power, the cable company has the right to use the beach area of your lot for their thing, and the public has the right to use it. And these are all exclusions in their deed on page 2. So in the first page, it says you own all the way to the water line. So, I mean, I think we need to consider maybe that somewhat. And then the third thing I think is really important to consider with these chairs is that the tax map. Because when you look at the actual Pinellas County tax assessor page, and it's not just the map, it's the actual deeded description of the property, it has a line that says land. And there's two components. There's the hard surface land, and then there's the part that says marshland, wasteland. And it doesn't include even sand. It's marshland and wasteland. And when you look at the dimensions of these properties, and I've shown this page to the City Commission, it actually is the width of like the sodded land that they're paying for by the square foot, which is like a big amount. And then there's the marshland area, which is 0 by 0 dimensions, and it's a very low amount. And so none of the resorts on the beach that I've seen, and none of the properties, resort or private property, is actually paying direct taxes for their square feet of beach. They might be paying up to the sand dune, but they're not paying for the beach itself directly in taxes. And so when we say, oh, you're depriving somebody or a business of their land, I mean, that would be terrible, but when you also consider that the tax assessor recognizes that the public has been using that land and they don't have exclusive control of that beach, and they're not paying taxes for that X by X dimension of the beach, we have to, I think that should be weighed when we're thinking about the rights to at least exclude others from the area, or what the chairs may cause by covering an area by chairs.
Understood. Yeah, and I think some of that analysis will come into the business impact statement that we have to do. But, I don't know if some of you saw the planning board for Surratt. I mean, there's some developments coming forward, and, one of the requirements is not only public access easements, but public access easements east and west, right, across the beach, 15 feet from the mean high water line. So if these things get approved, or if those conditions end up being implemented, I think the definitions in our beach ordinance will have to change, because it's not just, it's public beaches, but it's also going to have to include easement areas in which we've been granted access for the public to traverse, right? So there's a lot of factors here. I think the timing of it, I understand there's frustration on wanting to get a beach ordinance approved, but I think with the developments coming in and some of these conditions coming in, it's actually great timing for us to kind of react if these things do get approved and move forward. So, yeah.
Betty or Karen, do you have any questions?
Matthew, I just wanted to make sure that with the city staff working on the business impact of the beach ordinance, that the part in the beach ordinance about businesses needing to get licenses for kind of any activity on the beach now, that part doesn't get left out of the business impact evaluation, the economic impact evaluation.
Got it. Yeah, some kind of commercial permit.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to be very thorough, and I'll be honest with you, it's going to be pretty difficult. I mean, we may even have a workshop on it to kind of get some insight from you all, because this is new to every local jurisdiction, but this ordinance specifically, with things like the commercial permit and, having the resort saying, I make this amount of money on my beaches, it's going to be very, very involved. So it's not just the ordinance. The ordinance itself, I think I could probably update, in a couple of weeks, but it's this ancillary document that's going to probably be, 15 to 20 pages, if not more.
Yep.
So. Thank you for that, though.
Betty?
Just a question. I don't know if it's a possibility, because I know it could take time, thinking of what you're saying about maybe the next meeting or workshop. So we're 3-4 months out, and I'm just trying to not be pessimistic, but that's how I see it. But is there parts of the ordinance that can move forward that doesn't include the chairs? You know, I think of like the waterways, you know, that like part of it was brought to the commission, not the full waterway ordinance, but is there certain parts that we can move forward with?
So waterways is a whole different animal, like regulating and putting up signs on the waterways. If you think this beach ordinance has been difficult, I mean, get ready, because you have to work with the state, they have to approve the ordinance, there's a whole application process, we have to hire a consultant to help us with that, because it's very specific, because it's not technically our jurisdiction, right? So there's a lot of approvals that you have to get for the regulations on the waterway. Now, I will say the beach side is easier than the bay side, right, when you're talking about regulating waterways. But if the idea was to, as you know, pull all these regulations from all these different sections and put them in a very comprehensive new section about beach regulations, I don't know how much sense it makes to piecemeal it. It's possible, right? You could create a new section right now with, you know, 3 or 4 sections that everyone agrees to and says, okay, these are the regulations, and we'll just default to what we have. But then again, I think we're in the same boat where, you know, enforcement's hard. What section do I look at? To have to tell the sheriff. It just becomes kind of a hodgepodge, which is the whole purpose of what we're doing. But it is possible.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew, very much.
My pleasure.
For your time.
Thank you.
And next up, we have a update on the beach nourishment from Dr. Bishop, and I believe he's going to zoom in for us.
I'm here, just give me a second. I'm trying to figure out where I turn my camera back on.
There you are.
Can you all see me?
Yes, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I can give you a quick update on the emergency dune project and the beach nourishment. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but it's been a very busy couple of months. Just give me 1 second. So the projects at the emergency dune projects at Upham and Paso Grill are now finished. They're constructed, they have COs on them, we've placed signage, and we're going to periodically water them to be sure that the dune vegetation can establish. As you may or may not know, the dune design we sort of took from the Corps' new project that they'll be building. So they recently authorized a new project for St. Pete Beach and Treasure Island that includes a 10-foot dune. So that's where we came up with a design for that, and that'll be part of the project, at least in the next phase for the next 50 years. As to the most recent nourishment project that we were supposed to be having right about now, that project is still on hold due to easement issues in Treasure Island and in St. Pete Beach. The easement issues in St. Pete Beach are largely the silver sands. The Corps is requiring those 3 parcels there to be included as part of the project in order to move forward, and they're still requiring 100% of the easements. In Sunshine, or in Treasure Island, we have some in Sunshine Beach and Sunset Beach that we need to fix too before we were able to move forward. Unfortunately, the Sand Key easement issues we've been having have moved down into Treasure Island and Long Key and are now affecting all of our projects. But it's not just Pinellas County, this is a statewide thing, and it's affecting most of the projects in Florida now. So I wish I could give you better news on the federal project, but it's at least on hold for the interim until these easement issues can be figured out. They did say that we can separate Treasure Island and Long Key, though. So if we can solve the easement issues in Long Key, we should be able to, or sorry, in St. Pete Beach, that's what we call St. Pete Beach, Long Key, then we should be able to move forward with that project. In case we're not able to move forward with that project, we are beginning the process of designing our own project in parallel, so that hopefully if a solution cannot be found with the Army Corps, we can step in and get sand on the beach. We can't do that right now because we don't have all of the permits that would be required. I guess it's a short and sweet update. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions?
I've got a couple of quick questions. I was at Upham Beach just this morning, walking around and checking out the dune, and I guess my question is there really, it seems like, looking at it, like there's not really enough space on the north end of Upham for that 10-foot dune. You know, the high water line is up to the very foot of the dune. I mean, it looks like pretty rapidly, if we have any kind of a full moon and a little bit of a northwest wind, that the bottom of that dune is just going to get eroded out and they're going to collapse. Is that dune there kind of an experiment, or is there any kind of, you know, confidence that that dune is going to hang out there for very long?
Now, let's keep in mind the frame in which we built this too, right? After Idalia came through, a lot of the beaches were very eroded, and we were asked to come in and do a project to, you know, get sand on the beach and try to restore some of these severely eroded areas. Upham Beach, that north end, has always been severely eroded, and it probably always will be. Even shortly after nourishment projects, the sand erodes from that area pretty quickly.
Yep.
And I think a lot of us remember when, without the groins there, it would erode back to the snack shack or whatever that little pavilion is in the middle of Upham Beach. And that used to be the state of things. So progressively, we're getting better with stabilizing the beach there, and we're working at trying to keep the sand there. You know, without having the ability to place sand in the water, building a dune project was really the only thing we could do that was substantial.
Yep.
Post-storm, because we had to work on the dry beach. So we were really limited in the space we could work.
Yep.
Otherwise, it could be 3 years before any sand comes in. So, you know, that's kind of the framework. And also remember, it was still hurricane season, and there was a real push to be able to, you know, get some protection out in these places with hurricane season still ongoing at that time. And with the winter fronts that will be coming through, and you know, I'm sure you all recognize those winter fronts can be more damaging than the hurricanes can, to the beaches at least. I think most of our erosion occurs during the winters. So, do I have confidence that the entire dune will stay intact? No. I think a portion of it will erode away. I think that's, you know, pretty plain to see. If the water's already at the base of the dune, it's not going to take a lot for it to begin to erode. But keep in mind that sand will feed the beach. So as that sand erodes away and enters the beach system, it'll scarp just like any dune does when the water gets up to the edge of it. But that sand then enters the beach, widens the beach, and feeds the beach. So really, the whole project still needs to find sort of a state of equilibrium with the natural system, just like our beach nourishment projects do. A lot of people, when we first fill a beach nourishment project, will see the shoreline erode very rapidly at first, and they think it was a big waste. But you know, that's part of the project. It erodes, it fills in the areas below the water level that, you know, are steeper, and it helps to find sort of a state of equilibrium with the beach system.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I've got
If everyone has patience, I think the dunes will be reshaping themselves by Mother Nature for a while. The COs, we planted the COs. We're hoping to stabilize the beach as much as possible, but you know, the COs aren't magic. They're not going to hold it all in place. They need to grow, and it's going to take a little while for them to grow. And even when they do grow, they don't stop the dune from eroding when the waves hit it. So I think we're hoping that we will still have a dune in place for years to come, but it will probably very likely be a much smaller dune. But like I said, keep in mind that this is also what the Corps is going to be building. Maybe not this next nourishment. We have one, maybe two at most left on the previous authorization. But the next 50 years is going to be a 10-foot dune that they're planning on extending up to 20 feet wide at the top with slopes and then a 70-foot berm in front. That's what the current authorized by Congress design is for the future project. And so that's pretty much what they can build.
I've got a few questions, and not necessarily in the best order. One is that I did some research and found that a number of different states, when looking at the different Army Corps projects that have happened just in the last couple of years, because I wanted to know if this was something about, the federal, Army Corps just being mean to Florida or going across the states. And I did find that in other states, like New York State, there actually people were complaining because they felt that the beach nourishment being done in Patchogue, I think it was, or Quannog, one of those Nogs, they actually were mad because they weren't making the people deed, and they said this is just, re-nourishment for rich people who live right at that location, because they weren't requiring it. And then I read about another state, I think it was North Carolina, where they were using eminent domain, not for the whole property, but just for the part of the property that they needed access to. And there was federal money available, and they were saying, look, you've got to surrender this land now and apply for this money, because the government is going to pay to take this land and use it to protect, the area, but it was using federal money. So it wasn't just eminent domain, because eminent domain, isn't just taking, it's taking, and then the landowner gets the fair value. But there was federal money to actually pay that fair value, so it didn't have to come from the state or the community or somewhere else. So are either of those things, can you just respond to either of those things?
Well, anything about eminent domain is way above my pay grade, so I can't respond to that. But as far as I know, the Corps is stating that they require these easements nationwide. Essentially, they're saying Florida's been doing it differently than every other state, and every other state is providing perpetual public access easements for all areas where they're going to or need to in the future place sand. That's essentially what they're stating. I think that they are, right now the microscope is on Florida, and so they're finding a lot of issues with the easement. So I don't know how it extends nationwide, but right now, since they decided to double down and look at Florida, I think there may only be 6 or 7 projects, or project areas anyways, that are fine. I think there's upwards over 13 or 14 projects that have issues.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem...
Affecting everyone across the Panhandle, and probably people who don't even know it's affecting them yet.
Yeah, I mean...
Across the state, too.
If you go, I mean, I'd be happy to send you some of the articles if I get your information. And then also, you used a key word, you said place sand, and I think of place sand being nourishment. Is repairing dunes placing sand? Because I was thinking before about the distinction that, that when you're placing sand and making new beach, false accretion, so to speak, you're bringing the sand in, you're creating beach. That's one thing. But should a property owner, a resort or whatever, have to give up their rights to the beach because you're helping create a dune that's really helping to preserve things that are on the other side of the dune? The dune only helps what's behind it.
The Army Corps sees it as their requirement to provide perpetual public access for all areas where they even place 1 grain of sand. They've said that they want easements going back everywhere, wherever they've even placed 1 grain of sand. So they require it, even though people shouldn't be recreating on the dunes, the Corps still requires the easement to have perpetual public access, because they feel the taxpayer should have access to all areas where they're placing sand. Now, whether or not that's further regulated and it's still allowed to go on the dune, that doesn't matter to them. They require that this easement, this standard easement they have, cover all areas where they're going to place sand, whether it's in dune form, whether it's beach form, it doesn't matter.
So are they placing sand in the dunes, or are they placing sand in front of, between the dunes and the water also?
No, so the distinction doesn't necessarily stop there. It's wherever they may need to place sand as part of the project. So if there's a certain area within the dune that they expect could erode away in the next 50 years due to a storm, then they need to have that easement cover everything they may ever need to put down.
Okay, so it's not just what they're doing.
Dunes extend landward so far.
They're doing in landward?
Easements.
I'm sorry? Say
Sorry, I misspoke. That's why a lot of the easements extend landward into the dunes and even further back is because it is within their federal project area, the area in which they will, replace the beach and or dune during the lifetime of the project.
Yeah, I was trying to dispel some of the rumors, but it sounds like they're true then, because some people were saying that the reason they were having some problems in getting these easements was because they weren't just asking for easements on the area they were even working on, they were asking for easements beyond the area they're working on.
We have easements in Santee where we're asking for an easement that's 20 feet wide and it's 70 feet from the beach. It's because that's where the property is. It's 70 feet inside the dune. But because it's seaward of the seawall, they want the easement to cover it because if, 100 feet of dune erodes away, they may need to come back in and put sand there.
Well, isn't that a different project? And get a dune easement then?
It's the same core policy. I'm just explaining as an example, for the Santee project, they're requiring easements that are even 70 feet inside the dune.
Okay. I mean, but that's, all right, yeah, someone else.
Anyone else? Questions germane to the nourishment? Okay. Dr. Bishop, thank you very much for your time. And also, I went to the core meeting with a lot of people, I think were here. We walked away from there shaking our heads, and the county stepped in. Appreciate what you've done, the county's done, our mayor, our commissioners, staff. It's been incredible what's happened over the last 2 months. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And feel free to reach out to me for any questions you have.
Okay? Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the audience. As far as comments, do we have somebody?
Yes, I did receive a comment card from Robert Saison.
Robert Saison. Good morning. How are you doing this morning?
Fantastic. I wish it was a little sunnier.
Yeah.
Still,
We need
still
the
Florida's
rain.
still beautiful.
Yeah.
Robert Cezanne, 4506 Gulf Boulevard, Plaza Beach Resorts. Just wanted to comment on Matthew's presentation, and he is absolutely right. This is going to be a project and a half. The problem really is the beaches are different parcels, different sizes. If you drive down your community, wherever your neighborhood where you live, the house to your left and the house to your right is the exact same parcel size. On the beaches, every parcel is different. So if we were to do 75 feet setback from the left side and 75 feet setback on the right side to put the chairs in the middle, some properties aren't even that wide. My property is only 136 feet wide. So I've got no space. So that's the problem we're getting into. Every parcel is different, so we have to figure out the correct number, whether it's a percentage, whether it's a number, how far from the front, how far from the back, how many chairs. So there's a lot to deal with. So the hoteliers have been working with staff in the city, as we have through the Chamber of Commerce. So we just want to let you know that the hotels are working with the city and the staff to try to get this pushed through as quickly as it can. But as he mentioned, it's going to be, unfortunately, a marathon. It's not going to be easy, but we'll definitely get through it. And we're concerned about the turtles. Our hotel has been there since 1951. Our family has owned it since 1988. We've had many times turtles nesting in front of our property, even getting through the chairs. I mean, they get through. I mean, these species have been around for thousands of years, so they're very smart. So they know how, if they got to get it done, they're going to get it done. So, but we are definitely concerned about the turtles. We definitely move all of our equipment back when the turtles do hatch. And not only for that, but also for the birds. We have the blackbirds. I can't remember their names. Skimmers. Yes, we've had those on many occasions at our property over 35 years. So we're very cautious of those as well. So the hoteliers are here to preserve the environment, whether it's with dunes, with animals and the habitat. So we're all on the same page. Just wanted to make a comment.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Chair, I did receive another comment card.
Okay.
This one is for Leslie Price.
Good morning, Leslie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Leslie Price. And my concern is you're discussing how to use the beach with the stewardship program or policies. One of the things that I have seen that has changed is the allowance of the zip line. The zip line, I feel, is literally like walking into a wall when I'm walking the beach. Unless I'm down at the end, down right at the water line, I have to walk around that activity no matter what time of day it is. And I have nothing against zip lines. I love zip lines. But I feel that is really improperly placed to go along with the stewardship that we're trying to do and the equal availability and ease of movement up and down the beach for people or animals. So that's what I would like, just to re-examine that idea of not having something that goes perpendicular to the water that basically, in essence, makes a wall for people moving along that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we discuss comments that are made among ourselves?
Yes, we can.
I did look into that zip line when it was created, and I asked some people in the city, and the answer that I got was that the city wasn't really involved in that it was simply that they applied to the DEP, and they approved it. But I don't believe it came to the beach stewardship. I mean, I wasn't on the beach stewardship then, but I don't know what the processes are to control these kind of things that are created. And maybe that has to be in the ordinance. I mean, you know, we have the inflatables and other things, but those are more temporary structures. I believe an inflatable we consider temporary, even if it's always there. But this is not temporary.
I think we did discuss a little bit when we had the workshop about the activities there on the beach and what the setback was supposed to be. Now, whether we control it or DEP, I'm not sure, but I know we did mention it in one of the workshops that we were all in.
Okay, we'll look into it.
Okay, we will. Thank you.
Yeah. I would just ask the city, you know, maybe follow up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, need to approve the agenda. Got to get a motion to approve the agenda as it stands.
I have an item to add. No, go ahead.
I motion to approve the 2024 committee meeting. I don't remember what dates they were. August 16, 2023, as it stands. Were there any other ones, or
Second?
that was it, right? Mhm.
I'd like to add a couple of items to it.
I think,
Is that
Betty,
later?
you just had a motion for the past meeting minutes, correct?
Is that the one you wanted the approval?
No.
Yes, we'll do that one now. That's fine.
I'm
If
sorry.
that's all right.
We need an agenda approval first, and if
Okay, so we'll
Mr.
do the
Kurtzman
agenda.
wants to add items.
And John said he had something to add. That's something we'll need to discuss.
Yes.
About adding it. We've got a little bit of a time crunch.
I'd like to add a discussion of what kind of information should be brought to the Beach Stewardship Committee, such as zip lines or other applications, because 2 days after our last Beach Stewardship meeting, I saw an application for chairs at one of the hotels in Cabana Service. And, you know, when you read the charter of our organization and what we're supposed to be doing, I think we need to define, just like the historical organization just had a whole ordinance done on what information should be brought to them and what they should be involved in. I think we need to just discuss what our input should be, what should be brought to us, and then also how we should be communicating to the city commission. Because, for instance, I was at the city commission last night, and because I can't really represent the beach stewardship, because I have to discuss what I'd be discussing, I can't share information. And because of what we were just told by attorneys last night, it's not really appropriate to share information with the city commission as a non-commissioner about topics like the beach. So we really need to formulate how we do communicate with the city commission as well. So my item is, how do we make sure that the staff is bringing us the information we need to discuss? And then how do we then bring the right results to the city commission? It may be an item for another discussion later, but
I think that's a very good idea.
I'll start.
Should we consider that as an agenda item now and as addition, or should we just push that off a ways?
I would do it now.
Let's start today.
Okay, we'll add that if we can come up with a concise agenda item.
Inputs and outputs for this organization.
Good, that works. So we'll add that. I like that.
Dan, do we have this other public comment that we were given?
I don't. We'll check.
So I have another public comment from Richard Malinowski. His agenda item, or I'm sorry, his public comment was about the dune walkover, so I don't know if you want to hear his comment now, or you can wait till that item comes up on the agenda.
I think we would typically wait for that item if it's in there.
And you didn't get a phone call or a message to the city clerk about being kicked off the beach for having an umbrella? Okay. Someone talked to you about it. Okay.
Okay. So now we need a motion to accept the agenda that we're going to be following
With the addition.
with the addition.
So a motion to approve the agenda with the addition as, for today.
I second.
Second.
Roll call.
Take roll call.
Member Welch,
Yes.
Member Rosnicki,
Yes.
Member Marriott,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kurzman,
Yes.
Chair Rothenberger,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay. Now, we need an action item to approve the minutes for the August 16th meeting.
You did so well last time.
That's perfect.
Okay, motion to approve the August 16, 2023 committee meeting.
Second.
Second. Roll call.
Member Marriott,
Yes.
Member Rosnicki,
Yes.
Member Welch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kurzman,
Yes.
Chair Rothenberger,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Next is to approve the meeting dates for 2024, which are listed on there. Get a motion for that? Somebody?
I move that we accept the meeting dates for 2024 as listed.
Second?
Second.
I have a discussion item. I noticed that, for instance, today, we are conflicting with the Technical Review Committee. They're in a separate room, they're upstairs. They do not webcast. You really have to attend to be able to attend a Technical Review Committee meeting. Their items do sometimes overlap with the concerns of people that would be at the beach stewardship meetings. So I don't know what their schedule is, but I would ask that we don't conflict with them. So I'm not.
Is it the same time, you know?
Yes, it starts at 10 today. So I don't know what their pattern is that we overlapped this year, but I would want to make sure we don't overlap next year. I don't know how to.
I would say that we could just approve it as it is now, and if it changes, it changes. It's not a big deal.
Okay. Fine.
So,
Yeah, and then just add it later.
okay,
Yeah, okay.
that's fine.
Do you want to do the roll call for,
Yes, we'll do a roll call for that.
Okay, Member Welch,
Yes.
Member Rosnicki,
yes.
Member Marriott,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kurzman,
Yes?
Chair Rothenberger,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you. We've got an item of discussion. And Ayako, I think, is this one of yours?
It is one of mine, and Robin Miller couldn't be here today, so I did speak with the hotelier group on this past Monday, and I believe Rob Cezanne is going to come up here and update us on what we've discussed on
Good.
that.
Welcome back.
Good morning again. So speaking with Robin and working with Robin in the hotels, this is not something that's just impacting St. Pete Beach. As Robin would tell you, this is actually impacting all the beaches throughout Tampa Bay. So it's something that we take very seriously as well. We try to educate our guests at our hotel just to make sure they're bringing everything back with them. So Robin is going to be working on an educational plan to put out to all the beaches, not just St. Pete Beach, whether we're going to be making cards like we did with the crosswalks. But there is going to be definitely something that we're going to put together for the hoteliers that we can give to the guests to remind the guests that we want to keep this area clean, and whatever they bring, they take back with them. So that's just the only update I have.
All right, thank you.
So this came all from our discussion last time about pack in, pack out, you know, and how can we educate the public or get our messaging across to our visitors?
Right.
So it expanded from that to say, well, we could include information about turtle lighting, no dogs on the beach, you know, how our dunes are protected, smoking's not allowed, et cetera, and all these different items. So it's going to be an expansive sort of messaging
Good.
effort to educate the public, I guess.
Excellent.
Okay.
One of the other things that sort of dovetails off of that is I think one of the big problems, especially for the hotels, is I think they get a bad rap that people come from outside. And a lot of times the garbage you see behind the hotels is literally the six-pack containers from people going to the grocery stores and then or bringing it with them. And so somehow getting messaging out about that too. I mean, you know, even when the hotel has a garbage can and the garbage can is just overflowing with these things, people are complaining. And I think we just have to recognize that's not the hotel's fault. That's just people are overwhelming because there's so many people that are bringing garbage and they're throwing it out. But at least they're throwing it out. So I just want to, somehow we just have to educate people that.
Right, and we do anticipate, you know, the bigger holidays and put extra additional bins out on the beach exactly for that reason.
Yeah.
Because we know there's going to be more trash.
Okay.
Okay, and the next is dune protection, the signage, and acceptable walkovers.
So I don't know if that was coming from this discussion here with the gentleman's comment, or was it something that one of you brought up?
I don't know.
The comment that you sent around,
Yes, asking for
Yeah,
if
I
anybody
think-
wanted to talk about.
that's worth discussing.
So as far as the signage goes, all the new dunes have, you know, stay off the dune signs posted primarily at the top. This past weekend, I did notice that everybody was pretty much adhering to all that, so everybody is staying off the dunes, which is good to see. Yeah.
And I've seen the kind of roped off areas.
Post and rope, yeah, to give us sort of access over there. Unfortunately, it is a bit of a climb to go over them because they are 10 feet tall.
Right.
But
And will there be crossovers built?
I think eventually, I think it's going to have to be engineered. So it is going to require a ramp up, a crossover, and a ramp down.
I was talking to one of the city commissioners after one of the meetings, because he was complaining that during the construction, people were just walking across the dunes, down Pass-a-Grille. And then they mentioned Sunset Beach, and I had been at Sunset Beach a couple of weeks ago. And there they had, during the construction, they had enclosed the dunes, but they had a lot of frequent places you could cross over. And I said, well, what about that? And he goes, well, the people don't care because they just walk up and they don't want to bother walking to a crossover, so we're just making it illegal everywhere. And so when I read this, I get the idea that maybe what we need to be doing is having more signs on the sidewalk or the path, like at Pass-a-Grille, that lets people know where the next place they should go to get to a place to access the beach. Because what happens is they're going, and then when they walk from their car or whatever, because he said they're parking on the other side, and they get there, and then when they get to the beach, if they see that they can't get right to the beach, they don't care and they walk across the dunes. So I was thinking frequent signs, and this is not my item, but frequent signs or signs somewhere to let people know where the next closest place to get properly to the sand would help avoid people from taking the shortcut through the dunes.
Certainly, yeah. In addition to all the other signs that we have on the beach.
I don't know.
Sign
Yeah.
But somehow we have to publish somewhere. Otherwise, you go down there, and if you have to go from 22nd to 17th, they're not going to walk the 5 blocks. They're going to cut through.
Right.
And they don't know.
Okay, so directional signs.
Aiko, up where the end of the new dune is, which is very close to the volleyball court,
Yes.
is there any talk of moving the volleyball court south?
No, there hasn't been any discussion
Because
about that.
looking at it this morning, it's cloudy and rainy and the weather hadn't been great, but and it's not really the time of year, but if there were people playing volleyball on that court, and somebody came across the beach access, the most northern beach access at Upham, the person is either going to have to walk through the volleyball game or over the dune.
Yes, and they have been, the volleyball club has been using that quite extensively these past couple of weekends.
Yeah.
And I know the situation you're talking about. It leaves a very narrow path.
Yeah.
That the public can walk through on that most northern walkway to access the beach. But, I mean, that's something we could probably consider. There's not that much room for moving the volleyball courts further south, because we do have that cabana service
Oh, right.
also available there.
Yep.
Before we get into the, Silver Sands
Yeah,
property.
exactly. Not a lot of space there.
But it's something we
Or
could probably look at.
maybe we just accept that the first 3 feet of that dune is going to turn into a path.
Or make it a path.
Make it a path, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
instead of letting people create the path.
Right, yeah,
Actually
yeah,
designate.
make a spot instead of waiting for them to figure out where they want to have the spot, but yeah.
So look into that.
Is this something that we need to discuss or bring to the commission as far as financing for crossovers? I mean, I don't think it was budgeted in this 2024 budget, or what the cost would be. I know you got to do the design, but all that, I know we'll have to go to budget.
Right, I believe that falls under Public Works too, when it comes into their budget and how they will facilitate that, I'm not sure. But,
All right, we're moving to the agenda.
Do you want to, you had that public comment, sorry.
Public comment, yeah.
The one
Yes,
you said you were.
Yes, there is one more public comment, I believe. Good morning.
Morning, committee. My name is Rich Malinowski. I live down on 3rd Avenue in Paso Grill.
Yeah.
And it's great that you've restored those doing so fast and with the plantings and everything. But some consideration that needs to be taken, as you guys were just discussing, was the crossovers, right? Previously, we had ramps, wooden ramps that went over, and they're handicap accessible. Well, now they're not handicap accessible. There's no place for even an elderly person that has a hard time walking to get to the beach access. You have to walk through sand somewhere, and it's soft sand now, right? It's that white fluffy sand. It's not compact sand. So during your consideration when you're asking for a budget, the design and such of the crossovers, until then, we have issue, right? There's no handicap access. In addition to that, there should be some more handicap parking down there. I think the ratio is, three handicap spaces every 50 is a requirement by the American Disabilities Act. I don't think we have that down there. So, and they should be close to the crossovers, right? The slope of the current crossovers, you can't walk, a person can't, it's hard to walk up if you try it. And especially if you're carrying, equipment and you're dragging behind your buggy and stuff like that. So I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the commission. In addition to that, the north end of Paso Grill has showers and foot washes at their disposal at each crossover almost. Well, the south end doesn't have them. And while we're doing all this restoration, the piping's right there along the street. Why can't we install some showers and not shower foot wash? That's all. No, excess water only help the dunes grow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
How many crosswalks were planned from the jetty to the grill?
That number, I'm not exactly sure of. We used to have one at every sort of street other than the fourth one, right? Yeah.
Are we still?
I think the county's position was they were actually quite reluctant to give us those walkovers because a single monolithic dune is obviously more resilient than one with little channels cut out.
Oh, I
all
agree
around,
100%.
right?
People will cut it.
Otherwise, there's no way to access the beach.
It may be a problem that can only be solved by having handicap or people that really need to get heavy stuff over to the beach have limited access. It's just otherwise we're not going to have dunes.
Understood.
I think
If you could make them every other street or something that's accessible.
Yeah.
Or alternate. You have the cut-throughs, and then you have the
Well, currently, we do have 22nd Avenue, which is a full Moby mat set up for wheelchairs to access the beach. But besides Paradise Grill, on both the southern end and the northern end, there is a ramp, and which are water wheelchairs that we provide up there can use to access the beach. So that is available there.
If a handicapped person can find a spot to park.
Yeah.
So that might be
Right there.
something,
Yeah.
So more handicap spots at 22nd Avenue would be helpful, since that's where we have the handicap facilities.
And/or at the south end near the fishing pier. You know, that's a pretty wide access, and
Yeah, that's a
push
good
somebody through
access.
that. But just consider it, you know, in your future plans, that's all I'm bringing to the attention.
Yeah.
Good comments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, have a good day.
Thank you.
So I think that would be, and I'll bring it to you, so maybe you can work with the city. It's not something to answer now, but that there definitely needs to be a plan for access, the cost or design, so we can bring to the commission on what it would cost and take into consideration the parking. I don't know what the current numbers are, what's required, but like what was mentioned, there is current one. Maybe people just don't know where they are. I don't know if there's, if we don't need another sign to say. But, you know, how else will people know if you do come in and go all the way south, then not know that there is one on 22nd and Paradise Grill? So yeah, just something to consider.
Given all the changes, maybe just even on our city website now list where the crossovers are, and then which ones are handicap accessible,
Yeah.
and then maybe also consider increasing the number of handicap spots at the jetty and 22nd Avenue in consideration of the fact that those are now, they're going to have more load of handicap because we have less handicapped accessible areas in between.
Correct.
And that's something that the chamber could probably help us with as well. You know, I know they have a lot of maps and things that they hand out at the Welcome Center, and so if those things were designated on a map about, you know,
Accessibility.
for the crossovers, and especially where it's different now than it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe even tied to the parking app, because people go to the parking page, because they go to the parking page to see where to park for the beach. So if it showed where it probably does already, show where the crossovers are, but it needs to be updated now
Right.
because it's changed.
Correct.
Okay. I can follow that up.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Our additional agenda item then, inputs and outputs of this committee.
Yeah, so if you go to the main stpetebeach.org beach stewardship page, it has responsibilities, and it's pretty simple. I mean, this is not like the other group that needed a whole ordinance. It says the role of this Beach Stewardship Commission is to review information related to, and this is very simple, related to ongoing beach renourishment efforts throughout the city, is A. We weren't part of that at all. You know, we're after the fact. And B, evaluate information related to preservation and maintenance of the city's public beaches. That's it. Those are the inputs. And our output is make recommendations to the city commission regarding these matters. Done. So all I'm asking is, how do we make it that we get to do those things? Because I don't feel that we really are in a position right now to, and I'm not trying to be obstructionist. I mean, I think that everybody's done a great job on the renourishment. It's fantastic. I didn't want to slow that down. I didn't want to say, why aren't we more involved? The city commission was all over it. Fantastic. The county was all over it. I mean, they really jumped in. They did everything they needed to do. We didn't need to slow them down. But what should we be doing? You know, I tried to do what I could doing research, but I didn't even know how to get the information to them. I ended up writing them an email myself and said, hey, did you watch the city commission, the beach stewardship meeting? Here's the things, the articles I was referring to. I didn't even know if they read it. You know, so what's the conduit for us to get that information to them? And then, you know, what should we be hearing about beach renourishment? Or more importantly, evaluating information related to preservation and maintenance of the public beaches. You know, does that mean that every time, is it just the policy regarding, you know, chairs on the beach? Or is it every time there's an application, every property is different? So when an application comes in to the staff to, you know, do a new cabana service or new sets of chairs, since everyone's different, in the same way it goes to the technical review committee, in parallel, should it be going to the beach stewardship committee for consideration? These are the kind of questions that I'm trying to ask and see what our role should be, since that's our charter.
You have two things that you're talking about. So on the first one, on the renourishment, I mean, we would have to be on call, right? Which I think is not feasible, because a storm happens and a renourishment is needed. We meet, you see our calendar, we don't meet that often. So is it realistic to say, okay, we need an emergency meeting to talk because something happened? I think the city and the commission made the right decisions to renourish the beach without us having to give input. And I think what we're meeting now and talking about the after, I don't see it as an after that we didn't participate, but on the things that are needed, like walkovers, making sure there's information to the public on access, any changes that need to be made because of what just happened. I still feel that we are involved and giving recommendations back to the commission because of what has been done. Is it realistic, you know, for when there's an event? I mean, even after they renourished, I went out there and there was about 10 feet of sand that already eroded out. You know, is that a cause for us to meet? I mean, I took a lot of pictures of it, but in the presentation from Mr. Bishop today, it helped me understand that that's okay. It's almost planned in on the renourishment efforts that we are going to lose sand, you know. So I don't know, you know, I don't know if we have to be the ones to bring it to the commission when you need a quick decision to be made that involves a lot. I mean, a lot was involved in this particular case, since we had federal, and then we had to work with the county. So I don't know.
And actually, I misspoke, though. I should correct myself, because what they're doing right now is not renourishment. I think we have to be careful not to call it renourishment, because if we renourished, the Army Corps will never get involved. What we did currently is we did emergency repairs.
Correct.
So renourishment still actually has not happened. Renourishment is still all these activities where we're trying to figure out, do we get the easements and all that work? But again, we're not in the loop, and that is the more drawn out process. So emergency repairs we're not involved in, but this whole renourishment discussion, where how do we're not involved in that, and that is a little slower process. Emergency repairs would be still out of our bailiwick.
Well, I agree. We should be in the beginning of the loop, not the middle. And if there is an emergency, what's the problem of notifying everybody electronically? Here's something we've got to look at immediately and get feedback from the Beach Steward Committee.
Well, we can't.
We could have emergency meetings if it's needed, if it's an emergency situation. I think that there's quite a bit of beach knowledge on this, in this group, and that the city would not be doing itself a favor if it didn't take advantage of that. Why do we have a Beach Steward Committee?
Yeah. And I do agree for the renourishment, yeah, that's not happening tomorrow.
Right.
That's a long process, yeah.
We're not in that.
Yeah.
We're not in this renourishment discussion, really. I mean, they gave us an update today, as we asked.
Correct.
We're not in that
Because
discussion.
I actually watched 3 years ago now, when they renourished on Fire Island in front of a couple of the communities, and they did it very much like this. This was a very small scale thing compared to what they did, but anyway, yes, let's get in on the beginning of things, not the end.
I think it would be good to get input, but I thought it was ironic when you look at our charter, especially in the past, the Corps, you didn't touch them. They came and didn't matter what kind of input you were going to give them. And
They're tough to deal with.
Period. So, and what we just went through was an emergency situation.
Yes.
And
they did a great job.
They did an awesome job, and you know, did we need to be? I don't think it was that critical for us. I agree with you said, Betty. It's the stuff following up now, you know, that it's good for us. But as far as the overall project like that, I think that's out of our wheelhouse pretty much.
Emergency stuff.
So that's my opinion. What we have done in the past is if somebody brought something to us and we thought, well, you know, that makes sense, and we would ask somebody, Ayako, for instance, to take it to the commission or staff, and then they're the ultimate people that decide, period. It's not us.
Right.
But we're here to make
This is a
those.
reminder, this replenishment that we just experienced was a county-driven
Right.
project.
Right.
So the city really didn't have much input per se, because it was their project. They ran it, they managed it, and, you know.
But I think there were a lot of things even during this process with regard to shutting everybody out of Passagrille, for instance, and actually entirely closing that beach. And I was a little surprised that, you know, we couldn't have been involved in like some of those discussions with regard to maybe having crossovers or some means. I mean, people were being, you know, told they couldn't even walk from the north and go to the beach. And there was just a lot of things like that that maybe beach stewardship might have had a role in regard to making recommendations. I just felt like we were totally out of the loop, and I'm just wondering at what
Well, it
point we
happened
get
so
in the loop.
quickly. They acted so quickly when they decided to do this. It was, next thing I knew, is next week they're starting.
Yeah.
You know, there really wasn't much time given.
So I'm just, you know, they just created this whole ordinance, and it was pages long on how information should go to that other committee. And I'm not recommending we have pages long, but I think we should come up with some sort of list of the kind of things that staff should know to bring to us with regard to beach nourishment and with regard to information related to preservation and maintenance of the city's beaches, such as certain kinds of applications that we have on our agenda. Or it may be in a rare situation, just be notified of it happening, and then someone could decide, do we want to have an emergency meeting? But at least be notified. I mean, sometimes we get emails from Commissioner Grill. He sent us, forwarded a couple things.
Yeah.
But, because the city commission is hearing about some of these things, but just so that staff has clear direction on, they shouldn't have to figure it out. They shouldn't have to think about it. There should just be something that says, these are the kind of things beach stewardship should be told about, so that it's not a judgment call. Make it
I
easier
agree.
for everybody. I don't have the answer, I'm
You
just
guys
saying.
did a pretty good job, even today, bringing back the pack in, pack out. And I think about the hardships the hotels are having with the 75-foot on the side. I mean, we were going through the beach ordinance, so it's good to hear that they're working on something, but we're running into issues. So then now, when we do meet back with, whether it's a workshop or our next meeting, we don't forget what they said when we're reconsidering changing the wording in the ordinance. So I don't want the application. I don't think that's our role to get an application on the chairs. I think the city's doing a good job coming up with the procedures when someone is filling out an application. And then if there's a problem, I'm pretty sure Ayako will come back over and say, okay, we've run into this based off of what was written. And I think we're trying to really weed through what we have as a draft so far to make sure that it does work, because obviously we don't want to change an ordinance after it's been approved, right? So, I don't know. I mean, I think it's, in that part of the discussion, I think it's good. Can people forget to come back to us? Maybe. So maybe note to Ayako, but I mean, in your role, you're fairly new, and for me, myself,
Right,
I do feel that you
With
do.
regards to applications, though, I mean, anybody that submits an application, it would go to community development, and they would review the process and such. I mean, I don't even get to see any of that. So, you know, do you really want to be involved in every single application?
Well, I'm not
Next
sure.
to beach?
On the
You know?
beach, it has to do with beach. I think, what is a beach steward committee for?
I think if we were going to be involved in every application, we would need to be prepared to meet much more frequently.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because the last thing we want to do is add another layer
Correct.
of difficulty to businesses and more delays, and, you know, somebody wants to do something and now, oh, well, you just missed the meeting, you got to wait 3 or 4 months. You know, I don't think that serves any purpose.
Maybe just being aware of these coming in, though. I mean, and they're not being forwarded to you, as you said. I'm not saying that you're not forwarding these. I'm saying that this have to be the process of the city to, that's why they did that other ordinance, so that the city would have the process, you know, to get it to the that other organization. So.
And I do agree that we don't meet frequent enough to have to deal with applications.
Right.
I do want to know if there's issues coming because of something that maybe we've established. If thinking about the business permits that you might have to acquire, we don't know yet, right? Because we haven't done one. So it might happen in the future when, to get that feedback. How's it going? Even though I think we're going to get updates at these meetings, from the city about, how it's coming along and if something needs to be changed, so I don't know.
I don't think that we should be on the approval list. That, in other words, that something has to wait for our approval for, I'm not asking we be added to the approval, but I think that we should be included to know what's happening so that, I can't anticipate that everyone would think of having a zip line. So I'm not going to say we need to know anytime someone has a zip line. But if we are aware of any permits that are being issued or being requested for the beach, and we just are even notified of the link of where that it's happening, then we can look. And then if somebody chooses to do something about it, they can do that. But
I
just let
think,
us
John,
know.
so I think what you're saying is more that you would, like, all right, so we meet quarterly, we meet 4 times a year, so that maybe at the next meeting, if staff knew that what we also want is we want a report of how many people have applied for permits to do anything on the beach, or what is the, what is the level of activity that's happening between city staff and things that are happening on the beach. It probably doesn't need to be a real detailed, I want every application so I can go over it and see if every T is crossed and every I is dotted, but if it was a summary of there's been this many applications for this many different kinds of things, and this is the business, and I use the term business as in business of the city, not businesses. This is the business that's happening that affects the beach, and here's what's going on. That might be a better starting place than we want to be involved in every decision.
Well, it does say that we're supposed to be giving advice to the city commission. So I think anything that is going to go before the city commission regarding the beach should go to us also. So at least that we see it before if possible, before the city commission, because how do we give advice if we don't even see it? Because, that's our role, is to make recommendations to the city commission regarding these matters.
But that would really only be people who are like applying for variances or things like that on the beach that would then eventually go before the commission. So I'm not sure how many of those things there are.
You're not interested in how many wedding applications we have for the beach, right? You're not what special events the applications I've received, those sort of things. No,
Those don't go to the commission anyway.
Right.
So it would only be the things that go to the commission. Maybe that's the way to say it.
Well, I wouldn't say just the commission. I liked what you were saying is a report on impact, right? Like if, we added that as part of our agenda that.
I think we do want to know how many weddings there are and how many, because otherwise, how do you know, when we were going through that beach ordinance, it was very difficult, I think, for us to know what impact any of those decisions we were making were going to have on what's currently happening, because we don't know what's happening.
Absolutely.
We don't know if there's 5 weddings on the beach this weekend or 50. Like we have some idea because we're all out there, but we don't actually know. So we're not making decisions with actual information. We're making decisions with, well, I kind of think.
Exactly.
And actually, I saw some of that because I attended the Parks and Rec meeting on Tuesday here. And Jennifer actually presented it for the Parks and Rec with their facilities. And so they do have that kind of information. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. So having that kind of information, I think also any matters that will be going before the city commission regarding the beaches, that similar information that's being provided to the city commission regarding the beaches should also be going to us. So these emails that are going to the city commission regarding the beaches, or information going to the city commission regarding beach nourishment, should also be going to us.
I think so.
And then we're not approving it. We're not going to violate sunshine laws, reply all, but we should be getting that same information so that we can choose to.
And do we need to wait for a meeting to get it? No.
No, it should be part of the same distribution list.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Okay, I can work with the clerks to see if that's possible. Yeah.
And then how do we get our information to the city commission afterwards? Because we're not, even if we're attending a meeting as individuals, we're really not in a position to
Represent
to
the
chime in. We can't represent, and we can't, as I heard last night, can't say we're not acting as an individual. We can't say we're acting as an individual because we're a beach steward, we shouldn't talk really about beach things.
But you could speak to your commissioner, so you could always, if you saw something that you needed, you can individually call
Offline.
your commissioner.
commissioner,
Correct.
yeah.
Feed it that way. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's the best way, I would
That
think.
should be the way to do it.
Right, if there's something that you feel, hey, I think we need to bring this, then talk to the commission, and the commission can talk about it, and then let us know that result.
And each
And
of
we're
us
not
will do that.
limited to the number of commissioners we can talk to.
Um,
Just not as long as they're
That's a
in.
Matthew question, I'm not sure.
As long as we're not liaisoning what each of them think.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
when it becomes a little tricky, so, yeah.
all right.
Okay.
Very good.
We good?
Sounds good.
All right.
Do we need to make a resolution for that, or are we good?
Ayako, do you have a good feel for what we're looking for there?
Yeah, so let me just go over. You're sort of wanting a summary of what applications received, whether it be wedding applications, what sort of events have happened. I already do that anyway. Provide it to Parks and Rec, so I can certainly modify that as needed and give that to you every quarter. I'm going to be working with the clerk to see if we can get on some sort of distribution list with any matters regarding the beach. And we've determined the output is going to be, you can reach your commissioners personally. Yeah, I think that's what you wanted, and no problem.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Ayako,
looks very nice.
very much.
Thank you.
No more business?
I have one thing I'd like to,
All right.
sorry.
No, that's all right.
I stopped down in Dolphin Village the other day, my wife's old space down behind the fountain, and there's a bicycle shop there. Very nice bicycle shop. They have e-bikes with big fat tires, like mine. And they have pictures of people riding on the beach. There was nobody in the store to talk to. It was closed. I took a brochure from outside. I will talk to them. But those things we have to be aware of, because it's demonstrating that you can pick up an e-bike and go ride it on the beach.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
The marketing has to change.
yeah, it's marketing, and they probably got that from somebody else, you know.
Well, the same happens, I've seen a couple, I won't mention the hotels, but that they have their dog on the beach.
Oh,
Not their dog, but one of their marketing is a picture of being pet-friendly.
and they have the dog on the
And it's
beach?
just because it's a pretty picture of the dog off the dune, and,
No.
so again, the messaging could be that
Yeah.
dogs are allowed on the beach.
And we did address that with the hotelier group, and that's the emphasis of
Yeah.
producing this, whether it's in digital or in print, some sort of educational material for the public, that while the hotel might be dog-friendly, our beaches aren't necessarily, unless you're at Dog Beach itself.
You know, full disclosure, because we're out in public, I can say it. You know, I still am a proponent. I have a large tire bike too. I pedal it. I do still believe that people can, especially residents, should be able to responsibly, like on an overcast day, not today, but often on quiet days, off-season, weekdays, be able to ride in quiet areas of the beach, especially with the big tires where you can go into the sand to avoid people and be far from people. I never had a complaint back when they were legal. But when you start opening it up to rentals and people that aren't familiar with the devices, the worst thing you could do is start having rent things. Because as soon as you start renting things, things get out of hand, and then we have to make laws. And it just happens over and over again. Now we have to change our hours of our ramps. People just overdo things, and then the residents lose out, and everybody loses out because we have to control things. So it's really important that rentals don't get out of control.
E-bikes are a problem everywhere, because people who don't know how to ride them, especially the smaller ones, are very tricky, very dangerous.
Thank you all very much for coming, and this meeting is adjourned.